Picture the silence of space, an immense and dark void, infinite. And now, picture three men, sealed within a tiny vessel, suspended between life and death, between the Earth and the Moon. The date was the 20th of July, 1969. Humanity held its breath. Millions gathered before television sets. Radios tuned in from every corner of the planet. All eyes fixed upon a goal that seemed impossible. They called it Apollo 11. A number that today signifies history, courage, human ingenuity. But behind that name was a desperate race against time, against error, against fear itself. For no one, until that moment, had ever dared so much. That day was not merely the day a man set foot on the moon. It was the day all of humanity understood that dreams, even the most audacious, could be forged into reality. This was more than the chronicle of a single mission. It was the story of a journey that forever changed our vision of the possible. It all began long before 1969. In the 1950s and 60s, the world was fractured in two. On one side, the United States. On the other, the Soviet Union. Two superpowers, two ideologies, two visions for the future. This was not merely a political or military challenge. It was a contest to prove which would guide the destiny of humankind. And space became the new battlefield. The Soviets struck first. In 1957, they launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. Just years later, Yuri Gagarin accomplished the feat, the first human being in space. The world applauded while the United States recoiled. President John F. Kennedy understood that simply catching up was not enough. A goal had to be set, one so audacious it would transform defeat into victory. And so, in 1961, he spoke the words that would alter history. We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. It was a promise to the American people, but it was also an impossible challenge. At that moment, the United States did not possess even the theoretical technology for such a journey. NASA was given a monumental task: to transform a dream into reality in less than 10 years. An endeavor that would demand science, sacrifice, courage, and human lives. To realize Apollo 11 meant more than just building a rocket. It meant inventing an entire universe of technologies that had never before existed. The Saturn V rocket, standing over 110 meters tall, was engineered to hurl tons of metal, fuel, and dreams into the cosmos. Every component was a risk. Every detail could mark the fine line between triumph and tragedy. The engineers worked without pause, day and night, calculating the impossible, solving problems that had no names. For in the cold equations of orbital mechanics and the white-hot fire of engine tests, they were writing more than a new chapter in exploration. They were defining the very measure of human potential. Behind them stood a silent army. Thousands of technicians, scientists, and engineers whose faces would never grace a television screen, but whose collective will made the mission possible. The fear was not merely of the unknown. It was the chilling awareness that every failed test could cost human lives. And failures had been many. The memory of Apollo 1-7, during a routine ground test, a fire had consumed the cabin, killing 3 astronauts: Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. NASA understood the price of error. It was death. From that day forward, Every bolt, every cable, every single screw was inspected as if the life of the entire world depended on it. The preparation for Apollo 11 was not just an act of engineering. It was an act of faith in human intelligence. Every simulation, every drill, every trial was a step further into the void. The astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, were more than men. They were symbols, the living faces of a humanity that was about to attempt the impossible. On the 16th of July, 1969, at 9:32 in the morning, the Florida coast began to tremble. A colossal roar tore across the sky. The Saturn V, the most powerful machine ever built by humankind, clawed its way toward the heavens. Millions watched, the eyes of the world fixed on that single point of fire, carrying not only 3 men, but the hope of an entire civilization. The journey to the moon was no straight line. Upon reaching Earth's orbit, a fundamental maneuver began. The command module, detached from the rocket's massive third stage, turned and docked with the lunar module, the Eagle. Only then was the spacecraft whole, ready to begin the long crossing toward its objective. Minutes later, the Earth fell away behind them, transforming into a small blue globe suspended in the darkness. It was an image no one had ever seen this way before, one that would forever change the perception of our planet. Fragile, solitary, precious. Aboard the vessel, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins followed procedures with microscopic precision. Every movement was calculated, every breath monitored. Error was not an option. Michael Collins would remain with the command module, destined to orbit the moon alone. Armstrong and Aldrin, meanwhile, had the most dangerous task: to descend to the surface in the Eagle. The journey lasted 3 days. 3 days suspended between silence and the infinite. 3 days in which the entire world held its breath. And then, the most awaited moment arrived: the descent toward the lunar surface. But nothing went as planned. Once in lunar orbit, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin crossed into the lunar module, the Eagle. After final systems checks, the fragile vehicle separated from the command module, leaving Michael Collins utterly alone, a solitary human circling the moon. For the 2 astronauts inside the Eagle, the most perilous phase of the mission had begun: the long fall to the surface. As the lander descended, they watched their instruments, running through the procedures. But soon, a cold realization dawned. Something was wrong. Alarms began to scream through the cockpit. The guidance computer, overwhelmed with calculations, flashed error codes. For one heart-stopping moment, it seemed the entire endeavor was about to fail. On Earth, 250,000 miles away, the voices in Houston's mission control grew tense. The world, watching on television, was unaware. But inside that room, they knew the mission was seconds from disaster. As if the failing computer were not enough, a new crisis emerged. The automated landing site, their target, was a field of craters and sharp boulders. To land there would mean certain catastrophe. The Eagle would tip and tear, and with it, the dream of a species. Armstrong's pulse was steady. He took manual control. With a calm that bordered on inhuman, he guided the module sideways, skimming over the hostile terrain, his eyes scanning for a safe harbor. Every second burned precious fuel. Every beat of the heart was a countdown to the shadow of failure. Finally, with less than 30 seconds of fuel remaining, a voice cut through the static. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." An impossible silence gripped mission control. It lasted an eternity, Then it was shattered by an explosion of applause, of shouts, of tears. For the first time, a planet understood. We had done it. It was the 20th of July, 1969. Humanity had arrived on the moon. Hours later, the hatch opened. Neil Armstrong, his heart pounding, descended the ladder. 650 million people, the largest television audience in history, held their breath. An entire world united, watching a single grainy image. Then came the words, etched forever into time. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. The pale alien dust billowed under his boot. In that instant, the fantasy of generations, the longing of millennia, became reality. Buzz Aldrin joined him moments later. Together, they walked on the silent sea. They planted a flag, deployed instruments, and gathered stones not of this earth. Every gesture was laden with meaning. Every movement was history. And high above, Michael Collins continued his lonely vigil, the keeper of the gate home. He watched the distant earth, a silent observer to the triumph he had helped create. A man part of everything, yet touching nothing. On that day, for one brief shining moment, we were not a world of nations, but a world of neighbors, looking to the heavens not in fear, but in wonder at what we could achieve when we dared to reach for the impossible. There was weeping, there were embraces. For a single night, the political borders and bitter divisions of the world seemed to dissolve. On the moon, it was not merely 3 men who had arrived. It was humanity itself. After 21 hours on the lunar surface, the time had come to return. Armstrong and Aldrin ascended into the Eagle, leaving behind footprints that would outlast civilizations. But their journey was far from over. The ascent back to the command module was a maneuver fraught with unknowns. A single failure, one miscalculation, and they would be marooned, destined to perish 250,000 miles from home. So perilous was this moment, the White House had already prepared a eulogy for the men who might never return. But once again, human determination conquered fear. The Eagle lifted from the surface and reunited with the command module, where Michael Collins awaited their return. Together, the 3 astronauts began the long voyage home. On the 24th of July, 1969, their capsule met the waters of the Pacific Ocean. The heroes were returned to Earth, safe and sound. The dream was complete. Apollo 11 was never just an American victory. It was a triumph for all humankind. On that day, we proved to ourselves that no barriers are truly insurmountable. The lunar landing left us with more than flags and rocks. It left a universal message: the power of human ingenuity, courage, and hope to overcome the impossible. And yet, not everyone chose to believe what happened in July of 1969. From the moment of Apollo 11's return, whispers of suspicion and accusation began to circulate. Some claimed it was all staged in a film studio, that the shadows were wrong, that the flag appeared to flutter in a non-existent wind. These conspiracy theories grew, fueled by distrust and a desire to think that such a feat was simply too great to be true. But the reality is written in stone and light. The evidence is overwhelming, and it does not come from a single source. The lunar rocks brought to Earth were analyzed by scientists across the globe in independent laboratories. None doubted their extraterrestrial origin. On the moon's surface, the astronauts left instruments that function to this day. retroreflectors that bounce laser beams sent from Earth, allowing us, for over 50 years, to measure the precise distance to our satellite. And more recently, modern probes in lunar orbit have photographed the landing sites, the tracks left by rovers, the remnants of the modules, even the very footprints of the Apollo missions. The truth is that humanity did, in fact, reach the moon. The fact that some still deny it today does not diminish the greatness of the achievement. On the contrary, it makes it even more extraordinary. For it proves that while a great truth can be questioned, it cannot be erased. No lie, however persistent, can truly withstand the patient, relentless march of time. Some truths endure, shining with the quiet permanence of moonlight. Today, more than 50 years later, we still look to that small footprint, etched in the lunar dust, and understand that it is not just the mark of a single man. It is the signature of what humanity can achieve when it dares to dream on a cosmic scale. Apollo 11 is the enduring proof that our limits are not walls to confine us, but horizons, forever waiting to be surpassed.